What's going on, y'all? Machiavelli Mills TV. I hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. So, I just did a live stream explaining the 100 ways that you can tell a person is not from the city of Chicago like they're claiming to be, right? Now, I didn't exactly name 100 ways. I'm just saying I named a lot of damn reasons why a person probably is not from Chicago like they claiming, right? How you can tell a person is not from Chicago. Number one indicator, if a person tell you they from Chicago and you look at their driver's license or their ID and their address don't say 606, right? If they didn't grow up in the area, because they could have moved outside of the city. They could have moved outside of the city later on in life. But if where they told you they grew up, the zip code is not 606, it's not a 606 zip code, they're not from the city of Chicago, Illinois. I'm sorry to break that to you, okay? If a person calls the Sears Tower the Willis Tower, they are indeed not from the city of Chicago. They lying to you, okay? If a person calls athletic shoes, if they call it sneakers, they are not from Chicago. Sneakers is not a Chicago word. That is an East Coast word, East Coast terminology. People from Chicago call athletic shoes gym shoes. We don't say sneakers, right? If anybody say soda in the city, if they tell you they from Chicago, they are not from Chicago. They are lying. They are a false flag, and they probably was born in Chicago and moved down south somewhere when they was probably 1 or 2 years old. They are not from Chicago. And when you only was in Chicago for 2 years, you're not from Chicago. I'm sorry. Because anybody from Chicago we will say pop. We don't say soda. We don't say that. It's not something we say, right? When Chicago people go watch a movie, right? When we gonna go see a new movie that come out, we don't say we went to the movies. We say we went to the show. The show. We don't say the movies. We say we went to the show. Now, y'all heard me say the movies when I'm trying to explain to y'all where I went, and I know y'all not from Chicago on here, right? Some of y'all are, but not all of y'all are. And I have to say the movies so y'all understand what I'm talking about. But anybody in Chicago, when you talking to another Chicago person, you say, I went to the show, okay? If a person is from Chicago, and they say, if a person say they from Chicago, and they never had an Italian beef sandwich, they lying. They not from Chicago. And I'm not talking about that goddamn Italian beef from Portillo's. I'm talking about the Italian beef that's soggy, the bread soggy, is soaked, right? It got peppers on there. You hear me? Because when we grew up, see, Portillo's, I think they be making you pay extra for peppers and stuff. Don't even ask me how I know, because I never ate a Italian beef from Portillo's. My father and them tried to get that. I don't do that. I get my Italian beef sandwiches from the hole in the wall restaurants, okay? But yeah, if you never had an Italian beef sandwich, you're not from Chicago. If you never had a pizza puff, you're not from Chicago, fam. That's Chicago food. That's staples of Chicago. If you're from Chicago and you go to Harold's Chicken and you get your mild sauce on the side, if somebody say they from Chicago and they get their mild sauce on the side, they not from Chicago. They lying. Nobody in Chicago gets mild sauce on the side. And matter of fact, we ask for extra mild sauce on the chicken and fries because sometimes they be trying to be stingy with the mild sauce, and we need our fries coated in mild sauce to enjoy the meal. That's another thing. If you don't like your fries drenched in mild sauce, if you don't like that, you not from Chicago, baby. You're not from Chicago, homie. If you a girl, baby, if you a guy, homie, you not from Chicago. You not. You're not from Chicago, dog. Come on, man. You're not from Chicago if you ain't never drunk that little Mystic drink that they be having at the hole in the wall restaurants that you eat with your meal. You know what I'm saying? That you eat with a gyro cheeseburger or a gyro. Now, again, some people say gyro. I'll say gyro. You hear me? But yeah, you drink the little Mystic drink with your hood food, right? You're not from Chicago if you say you went to elementary school. In Chicago, we call our elementary school grammar school. We don't have middle schools. We only had a handful of middle schools in the actual city of Chicago. Most of our schools are kindergarten through 8th grade, our elementary schools. And we call them grammar school. We don't say elementary school unless we're talking to a non-Chicago person to talk about the city, right? You're not from Chicago if you ain't never remember watching the Walla Cam with the footwork dancing teams and all that, Final Phase and all of that. You don't remember that from back in the day? You not from Chicago, right? You not from Chicago if you don't know that when somebody talking and they say woo woo woo, woo wop the bam, woo woo, that just means etc. etc. Those are conversation fillers, okay? If you don't know that, you're not from Chicago. You're not from Chicago if you don't use these geographical references to describe certain sections of the city. If you don't say out west when you're talking about the west side, if you don't say out south when you're talking about the south side, if you don't say over east when you're talking about the east side, even though there's really no real geographical east side of Chicago, it's something that Black Chicagoans made up. We're talking about the southeast side of Chicago, which is close to the lake. Okay. If you don't say over east when you're talking about the east side, you're not from Chicago. If you don't say up north, you're not from Chicago when you're talking about the north side of Chicago, right? Another thing, a lot of Chicago girls, Chicago kids, when they talking about their father, they don't say my daddy, they say my daddy. You hear me? My daddy. That's Chicago lingo to the bone gristle, right? Are you from Chicago if you ain't never went to a juke party before? The juke party where the girls be slow grinding and slow dancing on you and dry humping on you. Even though we was doing this, we was like 12 or 13. I'll be damned if my daughter do this now. I'll be ready to choke her up, right? Are you from Chicago too? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of something else, man. Because I know a lot of, if you ain't never doubled up them socks in the wintertime, are you really from Chicago? Are you from Chicago if you don't call a crackhead a hype or a cluck? That's Chicago terminology.